You can't hear me.
Shalom, shalom. Doing well.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool. Hold on, I'm just getting the YouTube thing going. All right, so are you okay with talking about like the whole message you sent me or no?
Well, let's see. I tell you, if we can talk about it offline, be better.
Okay, all right, cool. I was gonna say like the key thing is outside of anything, I'm saying like whether you have students or people you meet or whatever, it's the thing is it's like one of the biggest concepts, and I'm not talking about anything specific. I'm talking about my own personal journey. I'm saying one of the biggest concepts, that I learned, going on this path of, in essence, converting. I come to understand that my lineage is very much already connected to Am Israel, right? But it's been like lost for like so many, I don't even know how many hundreds or of years, you know what I mean, type of a thing, right? And definitely did not exist in North America, and it's not exactly clear on where they were holding at in Africa and the migrations and all these things. But nevertheless, I was compelled to it, and I went on that journey. And one of the things that about me on my journey, one of the things I realized is like there's two components to it, right? One component is the intellectual and spiritual component, which is like the truth of the Torah and everything that exists inside of the Torah. And then there's another aspect, which is, the Jewish community, Am Israel. And they both work together, right? Because you need both. To really bring down the maximum amount of light, you need both, right? You need to be able to, do Pesach, but then also, having community. Community matters, and it's like, for me, it was like a big adjustment because, I just grew up in American culture, Los Angeles culture, suburban culture, and everybody kind of like did their own thing. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you may not have known your neighbors. You know what I mean? You may have never spoken to them. Or maybe whatever. But like in the Jewish world, it's like Jewish communities, like most of the people who live on the same street, assuming they're observant, they've usually eaten by each other's house for Shabbat. They get invited to, somebody has a new baby. Everyone in the community brings food. You know what I mean? Like it's like a big mitzvah that when a person gives birth to bring over meals, and they create meal trains and all these different types of things for people that contribute to that. And then you have things like the circumcision, and you just have tons of things. So a lot of the community culture itself is built around what they call simchot, like happy, like kind of like happy events. I mean, then obviously there's things like funerals and things like this as well, but in general, is usually someone getting engaged, or you going to this, or someone's getting married, and this happens, or someone is having a child, or this, or the kid just having a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, or you know what I mean, or just whatever, it's all types of things. And so a lot of the mitzvahs are built around community, right? Like like if you go to a meal at a bris milah, that's a big mitzvah. We learned about it, right? It's a Suda mitzvah, right? So it's like that component, and I think that's the difference, right? That's the connection, because I've seen a lot of, I don't say a lot, okay, that's not the right word, but I have seen people who have either didn't grow up religious and kind of like came back, or people who were like people who like kind of like converted in, or accepted, or whatever their process was, but either way they didn't grow up in the way, and now they're doing the mitzvahs. And so the biggest challenge with that process is, it's that aspect of community, right? And being vulnerable in a situation, and dealing with people, and dealing with different types of personalities, because the Torah is perfect, right? The Torah is like our connection to our neshama, to our body, to the physical world. Everything is connected to the mitzvahs for sure. But you know, but the Jewish people, we're collectively like an imperfect group. You know what I mean? Like we have great strengths, we have great weaknesses, we have great prophets, and we have great swindlers. You know what I mean? And you have people who will open up their house and give you everything, and then there's people who be like, "Who's this black guy?" You know what I'm saying? So it's a combination of just real people, real situations, real life. You know, just like the Torah is like real people, real life, and that ability to be sophisticated enough to maneuver in that environment is a challenge, right? Because at the end of the day, you need a community to vouch for you. You know what I'm saying? Like you have like, I'm not talking to you, right? I'm just saying in general. Like I'm saying, we have the chief rabbinute, right? So chief rabbinute is dealing with issues in Africa. You know, in North America, we're doing this type of like connection and outreach and learning and these types of things. And there's no pool to do one thing or another, right? But if I'm learning with somebody and they're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I want to go this route. I want to be Jewish. I want to convert. I want to do these different things. You know, blah blah blah. Right? Because I've had students. I've had. I mean, I've had people who've done that. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I just started. You know what I mean? I'm just like learning, and people like, hey, I need to go. I'm like, hey, go. You know? But the point is saying that the role that we play at the Rabbanut is that we have everybody's back. Right? We're there. We're support. We have the knowledge. We have the information. You know, we're building numbers. But the point is like where a person is at location wise, they got to build with that community. You know what I'm saying? Like if like say if I live in, you know, New Jersey, right? All right, you know, if I want to chill with the Jews in that community, I got to go and build with them. You know what I mean? Like, and whatever process that they need me to go through to be comfortable that hey, we're all on the same page. And if I invite that person, over to my house on Shabbat, it's a mitzvah, right? You invite a Jew over to your house, a Jewish family over to your house, you provide for them. It's a huge mitzvah. You have a group of non-Jews coming over your house, it's like, all right, I mean, it's not such a mitzvah, right? It's not to say the non-Jews not important, but it's a specific thing for the children of Jacob. You know what I'm saying? So it's just saying that those are the things that matter. If a man is in our community, you know, can we count him as a 10th man in the minion? Right? So we want to know that he's circumcised. We want to make sure he knows the laws and then we're all on the same page. You know, Judaism is complicated. It's not like Islam. We just be like, hey, Shahada, I'm Muslim. You know what I mean? Like, I think with the Christian stuff, they just they put you in the bath or something. I'm not sure what they do, but the point is just saying that in Judaism, um, the point is just saying that. So that's the reality, and I think anybody would want that. You know what I'm saying? Anybody, any community, anywhere in the world, it's like okay, so when people, a group of people show up, they're like, "Hey, we're Jews," and be like, "Okay, well, I mean, okay, we personally don't have a problem with it, but we have certain halakot, like right, the Torah says, uncircumcised man should not sit at your table, right? So I mean that's the reality, right? And Abraham was commanded, right? His whole household. So it's just saying that on my journey, that's been a trouble, and that's where I've seen a lot of people struggle at. You know, is that dynamic of the community? Because being spiritual is fine, and wanting to follow the laws, that's great. But if you want to go to that next level, you know, it's that community thing. And I'm saying like guys that I know, there's guys that I know that are not married, right? And you know, there's guys that I know that are not married, and there's girls that I know that are not married. And one of the things that I realized that they both have in common is that neither one of them, those people wanted to really become vulnerable to the community. You know what I mean? And it's a scary thing because, bro, some community people are crazy. You know what I mean? Like you don't know, And you got people, you got family, you got people that are grown up. I mean, it's easy for me. I just walked in by myself. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. So so yeah, so I mean, if that's a route like a person wants to go, they gotta be with that particular geographical area, and they have to build relationships. And people have to see that they're serious and they're committed, and then boom. Like, how do people know me in Israel? They know me because of LA. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like, oh, who's this guy? Who's from LA? Oh, where'd he go now? Hey, you know this guy? Yeah, yeah, yeah. We know. And that's it. That's it. That's the thing. And it's the same thing for anybody. It's not a black thing. It's like anybody. Like some random guy shows up and says, hey, yeah, I'm from this family or this. I mean, some people can maneuver a little bit easier than others. You know, maybe they put on the outfits or whatever. But in general, it all comes out. Everything, the truth comes out, where you're holding at, what you're doing, this, blah, 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 you know, and especially when it comes to like getting married and schools and that type of stuff. But it's a fun adventure. You know what I mean? It's a fun adventure, you know, and life is short, you know, and you want to have as much fun as possible. So, hey, you know, going on an adventure, meeting the right people, seeing how God is orchestrating things, the whole thing, it's a fun thing. But still, you're still connected to the Rabbanut. Right? You're still connected to us. You're still connected to a broader reality. You're not limited to that. And that's what we at this stage, that's what we really bring to the table is like when people go on that spiritual adventure, they have like a protection, right? They have people who will advocate for them. They have learning situations. They're not limited to that community. You know what I mean? Because some communities it depends. Like some people are learning, some people are not. Maybe at their little secret circles of yeshiva guys. And if you didn't go to yeshiva, they don't really understand you. Okay, so all right, very nice. You know, I have my rabbis too. Blah, blah, blah. This whole thing, and you're not subservient, right? But the point is saying, you know, what I tell my guys, and I'm saying it's like when you guys have students, right? I'm not saying about anybody. I'm just saying when you have students and they're like, hey, I want to go this route, what do you say to them? Be like, okay, like if you're there, you gotta invest. You gotta go and meet with the people, chill, get used to them, go through their process. Because like somebody called me and said, yeah, could you help me do conversion? It's like the thing. Yeah, I could do it. I could do it tonight. You know, but the point is just saying, I don't know your community. They don't know me. You know what I'm saying? Like not personally. You know what I mean? And even if you're from Minnesota, right? I'm in Israel, but like say a guy's in Minnesota, he's a rabbi. If they don't know you in Arizona, it doesn't matter. Oh, I never heard of him. I don't know anybody who knows him, so I don't know, right? So it's like if a person wants to be in the community, you got to invest in the community. You got to be a part of the community, and still be a part of a broader network. You know what I mean? In broader situations, but at least that initial stage, you know, it's about that, and I think that's part of the spiritual transformation as well. You know, is that like I'm not here for me. I'm not here to conceal. I'm not because a lot of things are based around control. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people feel safe with control, but the thing is, you just have to let that go and be like, hey, you know, this is what I got to do for life. Any points on that before we get started? Any reflections on what I said?
No, no, not at all.
All right, all right.
Thank you, Toda.
Okay, perfect. All right. All right. So we're in this whole thing. We're still in this process of leadership, right? And that's really the big focus, you know, at this time for the yeshiva and the teaching and the learning is like we're focused on leadership. We're focused on what does leadership mean from a spiritual standpoint. I don't want to know academia things. I don't want to necessarily read about a great general, you know, or some president or a prime minister. I want to know about people who worked on themselves spiritually, and I want to know how they have understood it in different traditions. So, Chief Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, blessed memory, we've been reading that. So we're in Vayeshev, right? And and right before this, we were in Vayeshlach, right? And so I learned that with Otino, but the idea is like this. One of the main principles that come out in last week's Torah, I mean, not last week, the portion before this, Vayeshlach, is this idea of Yaakov, right? Which is, I'm just going to touch on it, right? The whole concept for him was like, be thyself, right? And so the whole thing is that he goes into the idea that part of Yaakov's struggle was that he grew up with this like super powerful, awesome older brother named Esav, right? And to a degree, he wanted to be like Esav. And it took him most of his lifetime to get in touch with Yaakov. And so before he battles Esav, he fights with an angel. But that angel was reflective of his internal struggle, right? And so the whole basis of what he went into this last week Torah portion is the portion before this is this idea of understanding that our order to be a leader, or wherever we see chaos in our life, is because that's a reflection of an aspect of ourselves that we don't know about ourselves. Like we have a total self, right? And some things we know about ourselves, some things we don't. But the places in our life where we have harmony are the places where we know ourselves, right? Like it's like I'm using it as a very like base level, but like say your favorite food, right? You know what you like. You know what type of food you like. So you go in, you get the food that you like, and it tastes good, and you're satisfied. You can do the same thing. I'm telling you, I've been on this fried chicken thing here since they opened this place over here. I don't know what's wrong. It's like maybe it's a problem. I don't know. But the point is saying I know thyself in that way, right? And maybe other areas I don't know myself as much, right? In that places, I may have conflict. So he's using the idea of knowing thyself as being a mechanism to to being in a place of completion, to a place of leadership, right? So we're going to step further, and we're going to this place of Vayeshev, and it's just the idea of the power to praise, right? And so he starts by saying, Reuben is the leader who might have been, but never was. He was Jacob's firstborn. Jacob said of him on his deathbed, Reuben, you're my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength. Excellent, excelling in honor, excelling in power. It says this in Genesis chapter 49, verse 3. This is an impressive tribute, suggesting the physical presence and commanding demeanor. More significantly, in his early years, Reuben consistently appeared to be the most moral and sensitive of Jacob's children. He was Leah's son, and keenly felt his mother's disappointment that he should not that he was not Jacob's favorite. Okay, so another thing I wanted to say too is, like, say you have two students, right? And you have two students that are married, they have family, the whole thing. And so they say, hey, you know what? Say they were just like, people, like just random people you met. I don't know. They're not even African Americans. Say they're, say they're white, right? 2 year students, you have two students white. They're married, the whole thing, and they say, you know what? We want to do bris milah. We want to go through. We want to completely be in the covenant, right? Now the thing is, on that point, it's like, when you think about the concept of marriage, right? So the concept of marriage, from a Jewish standpoint, is like a marriage can only be done, the acquisition of a wife, right? In Masechta Kedushin, which is one of the books of the Talmud, a man acquires a wife, right, through a certain set of processes, right? Kesef star bia, like money, contract, and relations, right? But it has specific, very deep meanings. It's not like money, it's not contract, it's not in that way, right? But the point is saying that the idea in Judaism is that concept of a man acquiring a wife is this dynamic of him going through a process of omitting himself, and and her omitting herself to create this union. Like she has the give of herself, he has the desire. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like the opposite in a way, right? Because you think about, like, normally, like the woman represents Malchut, right? She receives, right? And the man gives, right? But in this case, the man has to desire her. He has to bring her in, and she has to accept. And so that union, right? So like if people go through that process, that concept of their marriage is not really a marriage in that context. So they would have to get remarried, right? And so it's a lot of like fundamental changes. The relationship with the kids, the whole dynamic. It's a big transformation. I mean, it's definitely healthy, but I'm just saying it's nothing wrong with it. But I'm just saying it's a big thing that should be taken into account. All right. So more significantly, in his early years, Reuben consistently appeared to be morally sensitive of Jacob's children. He was Leah's son and keenly felt his mother's disappointment that she was not Jacob's favorite. And here is the first description of him as a child. During the wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the field and found some mandrake plant, which he brought to his mother Leah. He says the mandrakes were thought to be as a aphrodisiac. I think that's what it says. And he says, Reuben knew this and immediately thought of his mother. It was a touching gesture, but it misfired because he presented them to Leah in the presence of Raquel and unintentionally caused an argument between them. The next episode in which we see Reuben is far more tragic. Rachel dies and was buried on the way to Ephrat, that is Bethlehem. While Israel was living in the while Israel was living in the region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine. If understood literally, this would amount to a major sin. Sleeping with your father's concubine was not only a sexual crime, it is also an unforgivable act of treason and betrayal, as we will discover later in the Tanakh. Absalom decides to rebel against his father David and replace him as king. Was this Hepatil? I don't know. You guys probably know. But Hepatila gives him the following advice: sleep with your father's concubine, who he left to take care of the palace. Then all Israel will hear. Then all Israel will hear that you have made yourself obnoxious to your father, and in the hands of everyone with you will be more resolute. He said, according to the sages, the text about Reuben is not understood literally. After Rachel died, Jacob had moved his bed into the tent of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid. This felt Reuben was in an intolerable humiliation to his mother. It was hard for Leah to tolerate the fact that Jacob loved her sister more. It would have been altogether unbearable for her to discover that he even preferred Rachel's handmaid. So Reuben moved Jacob's bed from Bilhah's tent to Leah's. This Vayeshev, the verb Vayishkav, he says, would therefore have translated not as slept with, but changed the sleeping arrangements. So that's an interesting point. So there's this whole big thing that if you read it, I guess, in a certain level, a certain literal level, it could seem that Reuben slept with his father's handmaid, Bilhah, right? But here they're saying that he says Vaishkav, he said as a verb does not translate slept with, he said, but changed sleeping arrangements. Okay, that's what they came with. He said, at this point, however, the text does a strange thing. It says Reuben went in to sleep with or changed the sleeping arrangements of his father's concubine Bilhah. And Israel heard of it, and then signals a paragraph break in the middle of the sentence, and the sentence ends, Jacob had 12 sons. This is a very rare indeed. It suggests is an audible silence. Communication had completely broke down between Jacob and Reuben, and the sages are correct in their interpretation. Then this is one of the greatest tragedies in the whole of Genesis. Jacob clearly believes that Reuben has slept with his concubine Bilhah, and he cursed him for it on his deathbed. Un- he says, unstable as water, you will not excel. And for you went up into your father's bed and under to crouch and defile it. So this is some like serious literary stuff, right? Like, I mean, we're getting to like this idea. He says, but yet, according to the sages, this did not happen. He said Jacob had been willing to speak to Reuben had he had discovered the truth, but Jacob grew up in a family that lacked open, candid communication, as we saw earlier in the discussion of Parsha Todot. the whole concept of silence, right? I don't know what you guys. He said, thus the years Reuben was suspected of by his father of a sin he did not commit, all because he cared about the feelings of his mother. This brings us to the third episode in Reuben's life, the most tragic one of all. Jacob favored Joseph, the son of Rachel, and the other brothers knew it. And he gave Joseph a visible sign of favoritism, a richly embroidered cloak that the brothers resented it. He resented it more. He says, when Joseph began to have dreams of the rest of his family bowing down to him, the brothers' animosity reached its boiling point, in which they had far. He says when they were far from home, tending the flocks and Joseph appeared to in a distance. Their hatred made them decide then to kill him. Reuben also resisted. Reuben heard this and he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let us not take his life, he said. Do not shed any blood. Throw him into the scene or here in the wilderness and do not lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. Reuben's plan was simple. He persuaded his brothers not to kill Joseph, but rather to let him die by leaving him in the pit to starve. He intended to return later when his brothers had moved on to rescue him. But then, when he returned, however, Joseph was no longer there. He had been sold as a slave. Reuben was devastated. Three times Reuben tried to help, but despite his best intentions, his efforts failed. And he was responsible for the he was responsible he was he was the responsibility he was responsible for the one recorded quarrel between Leah and Rachel. His father wrongly suspected him of a major sin, cursed him on his deathbed. He failed to save Joseph. Reuben knew what he would be the right thing to do, but somehow he lacked the confidence or the courage to carry it out through its completion. He should have waited to give Leah the mandrake when she was alone. He should have um, was it remonstrated with his father about sleeping with his remonstrated with his father about the sleeping arrangements. He should have physically taken Joseph safely back home. What happened to Reuben to make him lack confidence? The Torah gives a poignant and unmistakable hint. Listen to these verses describe of the birth of Leah, Jacob's first two sons. When the Lord saw Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and she named him Reuben. And for she said, "It is because of the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." She conceived again, and then she gave birth to a son, and said, "Because the Lord heard that I am not loved, He gave me this one too." So she named him Shimon. Both times it was Leah, not Jacob, who named the child. For both names were a cry to Jacob to notice her, to love her. If not for herself, then at least because she had given him children. Jacob evidently did not notice. Reuben became what Reuben became what what Reuben became what he became because, so the text seems to imply, his father's attention was elsewhere. He did not care for Leah or the sons. The text itself says, the Lord saw that Leah was not loved. Reuben knew this and felt his mother's shame and his father's apparently indifference intensely. He said, people need encouragement. So this is a big thing. Like you think about Leia and this whole process, it's like, and you think about like this is real life, right? This is real life. These are real people going through real things at a supernatural level, right? He said people need encouragement if they are to lead. He said it is fascinating to contrast the hesitance Reuben with the confidence and even overconfidence It says with Reuben with the confident and even overconfident Yosef. So they're contrasting Yosef and Reuben. Yosef loved and favored by his father, and if we want our children to have the confidence and to act when action is needed, then we have to empower, encourage, and praise them. He says there is a fascinating Mishnah in Avot. He says Rav Yehuda ben Zakkai had five disciplines named Rav Eliezer, Rav Hakunis, Rav Yehoshua, Rav Hanina, Rav Yossi, Rav Shimon, Rav Natanel, Rav Eliezer, and Rav. Oh, sorry, I'm like saying two names at the same time. Anyway, so he had Rav Eliezer, Rav Yeshua, Rav Yossi, Rav Shimon, and Rav Eliezer. Sorry about that. He says, and he used to recount their praises. Rav Eliezer, a plastered well that never lost a drop. Rav Yehoshua, happy is one who gives birth to him. Okay, so this is interesting. Okay, so that's interesting. So what he's doing right now is, first of all, he's showing that Reuven was supposed to be this great leader, but he wasn't. And so what he's doing now is he's connecting the fact that the relationship that Yaakov had with Leah played a part in Reuven's self-confidence. The lack that Leah felt because she wasn't the one that he chose, right? It wasn't the one that he chose. It was secondary. He just had to deal with her. So she felt that separation. And so that separation was a part of her personality. And that's when she gave birth. And he says, but the contrast of Yosef felt that love from Yaakov. He felt that connection to Yaakov. And he had this super overconfidence, right? He could change the world. He could change anything. And so what he's saying here is that he's taking these. He says Rab Yochanan ben Zakkai. So Yochanan ben Zakkai was the leader of, like, when Rabbi Shimon, not Rabbi Shimon, when Rabbi Akiva's students died, this was the group of people that were ultimately put together that were able that basically were the ones that rebuilt the Jewish people after the destruction of the temple. Like, they're the ones who organized all the teachings and everything. But he's showing that these different people, the names, right? Their names. And he's saying how the names of these great men, he's saying the names came from whatever energy that they were born with, whatever consciousness that they were born with, right? And that's the name that they were given. So he says, Eliezer, he said, a plastered well that has never lost a drop. Yehoshua, he says, happy is one who gives birth to him. Yossi, the priest, a pious one. Shimon, he says, so I guess he gave him these names. Wait, just try to understand what's going on exactly. Okay, all right, so let's understand this. Okay, so he's saying like this: people need encouragement. Okay, he says so. He's comparing Yosef and Reuben, right? How he says fascinating the contrast of the hesitant Reuben with the confident and even overconfident Yosef, loved and favored by his father. If we want our children to have confidence to act when action is needed, so he's talking about this process of developing a leader, then we need to empower and encourage and give them praise. So he's saying he said, so okay, so that's what he's saying over there, right? He's saying that if we want to develop children that become leaders, we have to be able to give them praise. We have to give them the confidence to act. Okay? He says there is a fascinating Mishnah in Avot. Okay? Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai had five preeminent disciplines. Rav Eliezer, Rav Yehoshua, Rav Yossi, Rav Shimon, and Rav Eliezer. He said he used to recount their praises. So he gave praises to these different students, right? So you have students, so like, I got to give you guys praise, right? But because that's teaching, right? You have to know that you can accomplish anything. that you have a supreme destination, right? And so that's the main thing. The Torah is the mechanism to convey it, but that's ultimately the purpose of the teacher, is to speak life into the students, that they know that there's nothing they cannot accomplish in this lifetime, no matter what they've experienced or what they think is ahead of them. He said he should recount their praises. Rav Eliezer was plastered well and never lost a drop. Rav Yehoshua was the happy one who gave birth to him. Rav Yossi the priest was a pious man. Rav Shimon who feared sin. Rav Eliezer who was an ever-flowing spring. He says, so they asked the question, this is a Mishnah, Navot. So he says, why does the Mishnah, whose aim is to teach us the lasting truth, give us this apparently trivial account of Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai's pupils and what he used to call them? He answered, I believe it is I believe is that the Mishnah is telling us how to raise disciplines and how to be a coach, how to mentor, and how to guide using focused praise. It's very powerful in relationships too. This all relationships. Praise is very important. So he says the Mishnah does not simply say that Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai said good things about his students. He used an unusual locution. He said he used to count their praise. He said, meaning his positive remarks were precise and accurately targeted. He told each of his disciplines what their specific strength was. This is powerful, man. I need. Hey, you know what? I'm committed. I'm committed on focusing on great things I see about people and pointing it out, even if it's like just in passing. I'm just going to just focus on just that. That's like so powerful. He said Eliezer, he said, had an astounding memory. At the time when the oral Torah was not yet written down, he could recall the teachings of the traditions better than anyone else. He says Rav Eliezer was created able to come up with endless forms of fresh interpretations. And when we follow our particular passion and gift, we contribute to the world. He says when we follow our own particular passion and give, we contribute to the world what we only can give. And this goes back to the whole purpose of the Torah in the beginning, right? The whole purpose of the mitzvot again. We learn by Rav Ashlan. The soul comes into the world, sharing, goes into the body, desire to receive. Then we have to transform that desire to receive to the desire to sharing. And that's what the whole system of the Torah and the Halakot. So the true self can only be realized through the process of sharing. The mechanism that brings us to the sharing is the Torah, right? Okay. So, okay. He says, however, the fact that we may have exceptional gifts, right, may only mean that we have conspicuous deficiencies. No one has all strengths. He says, so you may have super gifts that, I mean, hey, I want to see Michael Jordan do an open heart surgery. You know what I'm saying? So he says, no one has all the strengths. He says, sufficient it is if we have one. He says, but we must know what we have lacks. He says, Rav Eliezer became so fixated on the past that he resisted change even when it was agreed upon by the majority of his colleagues. Eventually, he was excommunicated for failing to accept his colleagues' ruling. Rabbi Eliezer's fate was even sadder. Sorry, Rabbi Eliezer's fate was even sadder. After the death of Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, he separated from his colleagues. They went to Yavna. I've been to Yavna. It's a beautiful place. He said, and he went to Hamat. I have no idea what that was. It was a pleasant place to live, and it was there, and it was where his family lived. Apparently, he was so confident in his intellectual gifts that he believed he could maintain his scholarship by himself. Eventually, eventually he forgot everything, and he had eventually everything he had ever learned. A man, the man more gifted than his contemporaries eventually died while making almost no lasting contribution to the tradition. He says there is a delicate balance between the neglect that leads someone to the lack of confidence, to do. Okay, let's go. Let me say this clear. There's a delicate balance between the neglect that leads someone to act confident to do the necessary deed and the excessive praise or favoritism that creates overconfidence in the belief that you're better than you are. So he's trying to balance this out. So that's very interesting. And he said the balance is necessary if we are to be a sunlight that helps others grow. So it's a very sophisticated dynamic that he's going into on this point, which is this frame of reference of developing leadership, right? And understanding that, yeah, it is about giving praise, but it's also about being supportive, right? It's about Hesed, right? Hesed, which is that frame of sharing. And then, but you don't want to do over Hesed, right? So you don't want overconfidence where it becomes blind egoism that, you got people thinking they could jump off buildings, right? So you have to give that dynamic of that. And then you also have to create that aspect of Gevura, right? Which is limitation, right? And when those two things come together, they create a harmony called Tiferet, right? So that's the frame of reference. So any thoughts, reflections on what we're learning right now?
Yeah, yeah, Baruch Hashem. Yeah, you know, I really love this portion of the teaching here, um, because it just this goes back to the lesson that you were having with the group over in India. About um, just this point, just celebrating. Celebrating. Find something to celebrate. Um, and I think that we tend to see a lot of negativity a lot of times, and we always, just tend. I guess we've been trained to notice the flaws and notice the negative things, and if you continue to digest and just only observe the negativity, it will cause you to be lower, right? To become negative yourself. Now, so being able to always see the good and see what is positive and finding those things about like your students, your children, just in different relationships, friends, and elevating those things is a very positive thing. I think it's a great tool to use, especially in like business ownership, in dealing with ministry work, just being able to find the positivity, the positive things in others and in situations. I have a story, but I also believe that when we talk about that balance has to be there. The story I have, a long time ago, I was a shift manager for a grocery store chain, and we were working a graveyard shift, a night shift, and I had a crew about 5 guys, and those guys that night we were shorthanded because of the scheduling, and so it was me and 2 other guys, and we ended up having a truck come in that was like 2,000 pieces, right? And normally you would have about 6 guys doing that truck. And I remember our general manager at that time, uh, man, wonderful manager, great guy. And I remember he came. We were struggling that night, right? And there was another manager that was there, and the whole time he just kind of sat in the office. He didn't come out to help at all, none of that, right? So when the general manager comes in, he's all bright and dripper, just great guy. And he comes in and he's like, he walks by us, and we have stuff everywhere. The store is a mess. And he says, "Hey guys, good morning. Great job. You guys are awesome. You guys are this. full of, just, man, you guys are superstars, superheroes. He was just going on and on and on and on. He walked right in the office and shut the door. And so I felt led. I went to the office and I talked to him, privately, and I shared with him. I said, thank you, man, we love you, how positive you are, and how you praise us and so forth. But the reality is that we're struggling right now. And there's a manager there that we asked him to come help, and he wouldn't come out. And I said, this actually brings the guys lower when you celebrate us and we're not doing well, and we're really, it didn't. It actually had a reverse effect, because they looked at that from the standpoint that he's not aware or conscious of our situation. You see, and so when he understood that, he saw that, he came and he apologized. He apologized, and you know what? He took his real creased shirt off, man. He put on a regular shirt, and man, he got in there and he worked with us. He got that manager out of the office. He scolded him, and man, he jumped in there, no hesitation. And you know what? That brought the morale of those guys up to a high level of respect, and we became a very cohesive group, and we had like one of the number one stores in our region. And I believe I credit it to that day, because there was balance there, and it was a good balance. You want to say anything? Told out, Rabbi.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly on that point. And the thing is, it's like, what does this concept mean? You know, I'm saying everyone has challenges, right? But I have to speak from, at least from an African American perspective in this area. It's like, what does that mean to speak life into our children? What does it mean to speak life into our people? What does it mean to communicate in that place? Like, what do we need to hear, right? Because it's a different thing. Like I hear what Rabbi Sachs is saying about Reuven and these types of things, and these were his own personal things that he had to overcome, right, within himself. But we're dealing with a concerted environment that is has images and stories and all types of things dehumanizing us as people, right? And so we're dealing in that reality, right, where they're saying like, oh well, there's some people believe we're second class citizens, right? We're less than. We come in an environment where they're like, they're challenging our humanness, right? And so like, how do we understand speaking life into people that, because I feel like it's so normalized, the attack and assault against us as people, that it's like we don't even think about it. You know what I mean? Be like, hey man, they got songs, we got 24 hours of music about killing each other. Hey, it's music. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, no other group of people would ever tolerate this. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like when you think about that component, or just the concept that we're labeled as black, right? And that meaning that you're something less than something that's white. A person has white is more, and you're black and you have black. So what does that mean? What does self-esteem mean? Right? And it was something I was actually talking earlier with Otino about. It was just this idea of saying like, you know, I was getting into an argument with some like, pro-Palestinian type people, and I was talking about what's going on in Israel, and they're basically saying like what you guys see on the news and the challenges that exist here on the news are much different than what exists on the ground, right? Like the Palestinians on the ground are trying to live normal lives. There's a violent there's a violent resistance movement that subjugates the Palestinian people, that really has really, I won't say they have nothing to do with them, but the objectives that they have nothing to do with them. Their objectives come from Iran. The same thing about Hezbollah, right? In the north, right? Same thing by the Houthis. They're all funded by the same source. They have the same objective, which is fighting the West, front line being Israel, right? And so the people in those environments are subjugated. If they speak out, they get killed. You see right now, you turn your news, you'll see there's thousands of people in Gaza protesting. These people are being subjugated, right? This is the reality of what's going on. But the point is the same. So I'm debating with these people, And the guy's like, oh, well, you don't know who you are and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, you're black, you're just a black American and you guys were slaves and blah, blah, blah. And America doesn't care about you and blah, 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 this whole thing. And I'm like listening to him. And I was saying, and I said to myself, I said, bro, the whole concept of there being a Palestinian people was literally created in the 1960s. The concept of Palestine itself was something that was created by the Romans after they destroyed the temple. They named it Philistine because they did not want to call it Judea and Samaria. Okay, so the people who lived here, regardless of who they were, these were the people of Philistine or Palestine, right? That was then. So that was just a name that the white people in Europe called it. The Torah, we know it as Judea and Samaria, right? And so later on, for political reasons, they formulated this concept called the Palestinian people, right? Now, why is this significant? Because I have a Palestinian person telling me that what I come from, there's no such thing as black, it's a concept. And I say, you know what? You're right. You're right. You're 100% right. The whole black concept is a concept. Black history is a concept. We didn't create it, we just heard about it. What's Black history? I don't know. They said, oh, well, this black person is a historian. He wrote it. All right, but my uncle's a historian too. You didn't take his account. You know what I mean? Like what? Because you chose a black dude to write something. Like, see, a black person wrote it. It must be authentic. So you get okay, you can play that game. But at the end of the day, they created this whole thing. They created the whole narrative, the whole concept. And the same thing by white people. They created the concept for them too. And when I say they, whoever's in influence. I don't know what their race is. They created race, right? So maybe they don't even have one, right? So the point is just saying, so he's saying that to me, but my response is, I said to him, you know what? At least I have the courage, to admit that the concept that my parents and grandparents and great grandparents identified as were concepts that were subjected upon us for other people's economic and class and social structure objectives and agendas. Why can't you do the same? And so when we think about that idea of going forward and going into the place of knowing who we really are on a human level, on a neshama level, on a soul level, the African American is in the front line. We're in the front line of the true reality. Africa was created, okay? Nigeria was created by British. The entire Arabian Peninsula was divided up by the British. They created Syria. They created Iraq. They created Iran. They Saudi Arabia. They created the names. Kuwait. They created all this stuff. Oh, I'm a Kuwaiti. I'm an Iraqi. I'm an Israeli. I'm a Jordanian. They created all these things. I'm in the Jordanian army. I'm ready to die for my country. Bro, come on. I'm American. I'm from New Jersey. I'm from California. It's like these are all created things by other people. And we repping it. We're gangbanging it. Right? We're gangbanging countries, this whole thing. And I'm not saying, okay, I'm not speaking against nationalism. But I'm just saying at the end of the day, at some point, we have to be connected to who we really are. We are human beings. And you know what? I have a unique soul. And that's why it needs the 613 commandments. The regular system, I'm not holding by the mineral kingdom. I'm not just living for the sake of living. I'm not living for the sake of just living. I'm not just eating and sleeping and waking up and working a few hours and going to, I'm not doing that. And then I'm also not a slave to the vegetation level, right? Which is this concept of luxury. Hey, man, look, I got a Chanel purse. Hey, look, I'm driving a Maybach. I live in the hills. We're not on that level. And we're not sitting around here chasing vanity and power, which is the animal kingdom. We are people who have a desire to be totally connected to God. That's the Israelite. That's the Israelite. Because even we know within the human component, there's different dimensions within that. But the one who has the desire to be totally plugged into Hashem, which is the human level of the human level, right? Because there could be the rock level of the human level, right? So I'm saying the human level of the human level. That person, that is the Israelite. And that person says, I need to keep the Torah. I don't know why. I can't explain it. There's no logic to it, but I want to do the precepts of these Torah, and this is the way I want to live because that's the level of the soul they are. Remove the name. Remove the name Israel. Remove the name Jew. Whatever you want. Get rid of the name. Let's talk about the different levels of desire that exist in reality. Right? The different levels of human beings. There's human beings that have no desire past eating, sleeping. We met people like this. We related to people like this. We know people who are focused on luxury. We know people who are obsessed with power. Preachers, this, churches, rap, all these different types of people. And there's people that totally just want to be connected. So owning who a person is saying that this is the desire that my soul has. I don't have the soul of these other kingdoms. I have the soul of the human kingdom. I have the desire, the highest level of desire, which is total connection to Hashem. Anyways, you go and jump in on that.
Yes, Baruch Hashem. As you were talking about this, I'm just thinking about the remedy, a remedy for our people, and how do we speak life into a people that death has been spoken to so long, and instituted. I believe that number one, I believe that, choosing to see the good in the darkest places. I mean, in the darkest places. I used to, I used to tell brothers all the time, growing up, man, I saw, gangsters. I mean, thugs, drug dealers, guys that was like basically destroying their lives and destroying the lives of others. But at the same time, I would see them, giving to the poor. I would also see them uh, buying gifts to go to baby showers, you know, uh, showing levels of kindness, but um, but they were in an environment that was assisting the darkness within them, and so in other words, we can speak life, but also I think we need to reverse the verse. We need to reverse the psychology that has been put upon us. In that, like for example, a lot of times we always talk about rewarding for actions, rewarding for what we do, reward, for good things that we do, and which is good. I don't think we should stop doing that. But I believe that we also should reward for the things that we don't do, the things that we don't allow, the things that we have restraint from, as far as in creating boundaries and borders. Like, for example, if, the music will stop if we don't buy it. The negative mindsets would stop if we stop listening. And if we find that place of restraint to whereas we begin to say, hey, listen, sister, we don't, there's no man in this community that desires to be with you dressed like that. Or sisters saying, hey, there's no sister in this community that wants a man that behaves in this manner. And so therefore we will become a positive light by instilling restraint. And I think that's like I said, like we mentioned a while back, the halakha is the 613 is so needed within our communities that we really have to really push it. We gotta get out there and really begin to implement these laws within our communities. I remember, and being able to go into the darkest, like you said, these places are created. Cabrini Green was created. South side of Chicago is created. If you go into and I don't care if you're in the country or the city, if you come to the country, you're gonna find every small town. We service about 5 counties, and in those counties, those towns, those little small towns that didn't have no more than 3,000 people, 2,000, sometimes 800 people, there's always a black side of town. And you're going to notice even the names of these towns. You're going to have the European community that's been known to be the European side of town or the wealthy side of town is going to come, Meadows Lake or Vista View or something like that, right? But then you go into the black community, it's called the Hole, called Pole Town, called the Tracks, or Skids, or something dark and something gloomy. It's nothing that's producing light at all. So when we change these concepts and we begin to talk to our people about the mindset, about what we're going to allow, when in our communities, we don't have to have the city come down and tell us to cut the grass. We are the standard. We set the bar, and I believe that when we do that, it's going to take some time because you have a generation that has bought into the lie, that has just been so inundated with these lies and this darkness. But I believe that if we put boots on the ground and we get into our communities and we really do this, and I know that as far as um, uh, Judaism is not a proselytizing uh, belief system. However, when it comes to waking up Jacob, that's one thing that is on the table as far as in going into reestablish and bringing the order and the structure that's needed within our communities. And I believe that these teaching series are really, I mean, needed um, in having us to be able to move into our communities with power, with force, with light, and change the whole dynamic. Because the Gaza situation is here. It's here in America. It's in every black community, and it's slowly being destroyed. Slowly, lives are just slowly being destroyed, wrecked. Our people, even though they're living in homes, their lives are intense. They're literally intense. And so that's I told our rabbi that's my reflection on this portion of it.
Yeah, just in one closing idea on what you're saying, I totally support. I agree with you 100%. I want to just throw one idea in. It's saying that when we think about like the way society in general deals with issues, right? And you realize that we deal with a society that they critique everything from the standpoint of the external, not the internal, right? So their basis of why things happen or don't happen is, it could be randomness in some situation. It could be some kind of like, some kind of like human pattern or whatever, but there's nothing divine about it, right? So the thing is, from a spiritual perspective, when we look at what's going on, we have to look at it in terms of, cause and effect, right? Society generally deals with the effects of things, right? Which is like, say, we have a homeless issue. Okay, let's build shelters. Or we have mental health issues, let's build more clinics. Or, we have, this health issue, we'll build more clinics. Or whatever it is, right? They're dealing with the effect. But in the frame of the world of spirituality, the frame of the analyzation from the soul, we want to deal with the cause, right? We want to deal with the cause, not the effect. We want to deal with the cause. And the cause is consciousness, right? And that's the whole movement. This is the movement of the Chief Rabbinate of Africa. That's the movement of North America and everywhere else we're at, is the idea of spreading consciousness. That's why we talk about a lot of Kabbalah and a lot of souls, because it's about consciousness. Because if we spread consciousness in terms of like allowing people to see that there's more than just the 1% reality, right? That there's more than just physically around us. So we have a kid in one of our communities, but really consciousness is for all of humanity. You know what I'm saying? Like for white kids, black kids, Haitian Hispanic kids, but we're just talking about the black African American situation because of the transatlantic slave trade and because of the connection to those tribes in the west of Africa that emanate from Israel, right? So that's what we understand, right? So we're addressing and saying, hey, we don't know who is and who's not, but we know if we bring the information that certain souls are going to gravitate forward, right? We don't have to proselytize. You just need to hear the message. You're like, oh no, that's me, right? The same thing it was for everybody else. But the point is saying that we want to be able to push the understanding of consciousness in the metaphysical world, in the soul, and the transformation of the soul as individuals, to the point that our young kid goes to the store and maybe he may even have a desire to steal a bag of chips. Like, oh, I just put it in my pockets after school. I don't have my money. I just put it in my pocket. But he's going to know that if he took the bag of chips, he only took the 1% of the bag of chips. The 99% of that chips, the energy around that chips, that's really what I want, right? Because I have a soul. So I want the chips for my body. I want with the Fritos, right? I want the Fritos for my body, but I want the energy that makes the Fritos for my soul. But if I steal it, I don't get the energy because I didn't acquire it. So that's the movement, right? And that's the movement that North America, in any spiritual perspective, has not seen, because we live in a capitalist structure, right? Where it's not about the individual, it's about the collective, it's about the workforce, it's about the buying power of America, right? Which means everyone needs to see themselves as consumers. So 100% exactly what you said, and I'm just bringing a different additional language to what you said, which is we want to focus on consciousness. Now, if someone wants to use the consciousness tools of Judaism, here it is. We'll show you how to do it. But there's consciousness tools in all spiritual traditions, if you look at it that way. You know what I'm saying? For me, I'm a descendant of Israel. So this is what fits for my soul. But someone from another nation can come and learn about consciousness from us, about the light and the vessel and the interactions and the different dynamics of creation and how they fit into that with nature and their fellow man. And they could apply that to their own belief system, right? Like, if you look at all the different spiritual traditions, all their highest sages type people, they all agree. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're like, we're one soul. We come from this. Okay, you say it in Hebrew, you say it in Arabic, you say it in English, you say it in Latin. But anyways, we get to the point of saying we're all on the same page. We got to keep pushing it. Tomorrow, let's try to push for 5:30 instead of 6. We just push it, just depending on what everything's going on. But I did Zion Lex last night, so we had a great class. But you guys, it's like the same stuff. We're learning the same stuff. So whatever. Any last points?
No, no, no,
Okay.
sir.
All right,
Thank
perfect.
you.
Hold on.
Thank you. Buddha.